how would you define what a challenger brand is?
So, yeah, some of it's in the eye of the beholder, right? Yeah. And some of it is because you have like, I mean, I'm wearing my Allbirds right now. Are they even a challenger brand right now? I guess compared to Nike or Reebok, sure. But when you start having some of these companies that then like get into this so-called unicorn status and these multi-billion-dollar valuations, then how long can you call anything a startup, a challenger? Hard to say, so it gets pretty murky. But for brands to go into some categories where there's been relatively little shift over, say, the past 5, 10, or maybe even 50 years in some cases, like I can't really name more than 2 orange juice brands, like Tropicana and Minute Maid, and I'm sure there are 1,000 other companies that are like at the Fairway or Whole Foods right now. Like, I don't know what they are. Sure, some of them are great, but there are undoubtedly some of those kinds of companies that are trying to change that, and then you see some of these companies trying to change it on a macro level, like Impossible Foods. It says a lot about how I was eating this year at the Consumer Electronics Show, but the best meal I had at CES this year, almost embarrassing to say, it was the Impossible Burger at White Castle, and I went back twice at least, and I think I tried to get back there a third time too. It was a short trip, and by the way, like I ordered one the first time, and then the second time I ordered 3 of them, and next time I'll bring some drinks and some friends and just like order the 100 sack of them, and but it was great, and it was like, okay, I'm still eating these burgers here fried on the grill, but it felt better to eat them. And they tasted, and it was one of those rare cases, like they tasted as good. But it's kind of weird because they're building what needs to be a B2C brand, like Ask For It by name, but they're going with a B2B distribution strategy. And it's like that Intel Inside, it's as a consumer, I want to buy that IBM, dating myself a bit, but like that IBM PC because it has the Intel Inside logo, and that's very much the Impossible strategy right now.
I love that. Let's talk a little bit, well, real quick, any areas in MarTech, AdTech that you just see prime opportunity for disruption?
So there are a lot of fun areas for disruption now, and it's happening on the B2B and B2C level. Like, I think that a lot of what we've seen around artificial intelligence today has been overblown, but there are some really great use cases for it, and you look at developments and say image recognition and just what you can do with that, and then how do you apply it into, say, whether it's to calculate sponsorship budgets or for security purposes, or so it's not so much about like what the tech is, but what do you actually do with it? What are you solving? And there's also a lot of hunger now for what are those alternatives going to be in terms of how people are spending their time. What's beyond Facebook, Google, Amazon? There are certain areas as far as like categories go that are fascinating now. The amount of activity around esports, or you look at CBD products, and CBD is so interesting because it's beyond the fact that like there's still debate on what it does and how it does it, and like you look at the amount of claims that are made, and they can't all be true for every one of these products. But but also like where can you even advertise these things? And so I think there's going to be a lot of sorting, like, when you have to start getting into state or even municipal levels, like can you put something on a billboard in Times Square, or can you run a search ad for it? There's a lot more we've got to figure out on that front. But I think like overall, how do you help marketers do their jobs better? And some of it is so fundamental. Like I feel like 25 years after the first banner ad ran on Wired in '94, we're still debating what a click is. We're still having discussions about viewability. It's so stupid, what's just terrible is that we have to, like there's been a bit of that on the TV side. There's been a bit of that on the radio side, even on print, right? Like, did people pay for the magazine, or did it just get is it like every a free subscription doled out through Publishers Clearinghouse or a doctor's office? But you could tell how many pieces of paper the ad was printed on, so you kind of miss some of that. So getting some of those fundamentals right is saying like yes, these ads were really delivered to real people, and then this crazy idea of what effect did they actually have. Like, I love the influencer marketing space. I was part of the team that helped create that practice at 360i from 2006 onwards, and like just some of the companies I'm most excited about and people I'm most excited about are in the influencer marketing space. But I mean, what like a festering cesspool it is too, and it kills me because it's so much of these like bottom feeders just like going after the quick cash, and it's some take the money and run scenario, and there are just so many bad actors that are killing the work of all of the much smaller number of reputable players out there. But we're still like you just see a lot of shady reporting. You see whenever I'm meeting with any startup, anyone, like the best question I start to ask them, and this really happened in the influencer marketing space around 5 years ago or so, where any company that I met with, I'd say to them to like kind of start making them feel better a little bit before I made it tougher on them. I'd say, okay, say we get one of our clients to spend $1 million with you. What's going to convince them to spend the next $1 million? Yeah, and that's a really tough question for most to answer. And like once in a while, you see someone who's really thought this through, and these are the people I want to do business with. And then there are some others where it's like I'm rooting for them to be able to answer this the next time I meet them. And then there are some it's like well, because we were able to show them that like these Kardashians put this out there, then it just made them feel better about running. Okay, yeah, so it was like a really efficient way for them to spend their money. That's also helpful because you see some of these red flags that come up in discussions like that.
So like performance and attribution.
And it shouldn't all be the bottom of the funnel, right? Like I think that as we push so much into all of these like growth marketing oriented companies and everyone's all focused on the growth hacking, then there's still not enough attention to how do people discover brands? How do we stoke that? And how do we get more of that word of mouth or initial awareness or just some of those content marketing is alive and well, and there are all these ways to do it that don't all lead to this immediate attribution. So it's like, we should look to answer tough questions, but sometimes we won't know how much product is being moved. Sometimes we need to do things because they seem right. It seems like, I mean, you're doing this interview series, I think, because you have this opportunity to do it. So you're going for it, right? Like it's not just what's the ROI on this conversation right now, and I'm not trying to figure out the ROI of having it. It's just like
it's Impossible Burger.
Nope. Yeah. So go out for some veggie burgers after this. But it's like just do things because they fit with the brand. You have this opportunity to do it. Like just run with it.
Awesome. What so I know we actually covered experimentation, but what would you say is the way to define the modern marketing mix right now for B2B marketer today? If you have to actually be able to put a plan together right now and you had a reasonable budget, what does that marketing mix look like today?
It's funny because I was just in Guadalajara giving a talk at this event, Talentland, on the 17 types of startup marketers. And it was much more about the marketers themselves instead of the marketing. They obviously go hand in hand. And the questions that came up most during Q&A, and there were some really good ones, but a lot of them are like, well, if you had to put this dream team together, who would you put on it? And so much of it is like, what do you have? What are you already doing well? Anytime I've come into a company, it's like, okay, what should we keep doing? And even at the last company I was part of, as I was trying to figure things out, and like I went back to the CEO and I said to him, what did I miss, right? Like what have you been doing for years that worked that maybe you stopped doing? And I want to go back to that. I don't want to be the most original person out there. I want to be effective, not original. So I think so much of it is having that mix of skill sets, and it could just be with, like, if you're a 5-person company or a 20-person company, maybe you're not even hiring a dedicated marketer, or but you have people who can do enough of the job, and maybe you have a whole team of marketers and they can't do any of their job. So there are a lot of X factors there. But how do you get enough of a mix out there, right? Like some of that analytics-driven, growth hacking, product marketing mindset, like the folks like Nir Eyal's book, Hooked, people who know how to create those feedback loops, even if it's for a totally different kind of product or service. How do you just try to get a little bit closer there? And also the folks who get the brand and can communicate it and tell a story around it, and just get into that mindset of the buyer, right? And try to think, like, what do they care about? What's keeping them up at night? Why should they care about you? Because most companies that I meet with, they're so focused on just talking about themselves, and some of it is that they don't have people around, even on a consulting basis, let alone in-house, who've been on the other side. And though, like, when I was on the agency front, some of the people I learned the most from were from sellers. And even as a marketer, like that's where I kind of have some of that envy. It's like if I could just have any kind of professional superpower, it would be from the great salespeople I've worked with. Not the great marketers, because it's like damn, they're good. They can make something happen, and they have something to show for it, and like they've been through everything, and you just see those gifts, and so it's but it also means that if you're trying to have that like best stack, that best team, it's these people who can learn well from each other and influence each other. That's tremendous.
Now, if you're a B2B marketer out there and you have to start to make decisions around what platforms are the hottest, or what should I really double down on right now. Do you have any recommendations around platforms or where I should, focus my time?
Well, the easy answer would be that if you're a B2B marketer, you should focus time on LinkedIn. LinkedIn keeps experimenting. So they're becoming much more of a media property. And LinkedIn with a combination of video, really powerful. It's fun that email is back in a big way. Yeah, and so even just getting some of the fundamentals down, like do you have a good opt-in list and a way to keep growing that? Are you producing content of value? Because then say you started getting into the fundamentals of drip campaigns, often an effective and important email tactic. But then you're not just going to hit them up 10 times in a row over the course of 2 months, just sending them your demo video or your one sheet. It's inform people. Maybe once in a while you have some liberty to entertain people, just like what other forms of value can you provide? Then that's exciting. I think B2B influencer marketing is fascinating and fun, and so some of it can get into more of a media buy, just trying to sponsor and support some of the podcasts you like. But I'm not the only one I know who's started a Slack community that's not tied to any business in particular. And I think that there are so many of those forums out there where you can work with people on this independent level, and it's not always easy, right? It can be hard to break through there and figure out how to find them in the first place, how to prioritize them. It's much easier on the B2C front, but there are lots of ways that once you get plugged into those areas, then you can get disproportionate value out of it, because it's the audience is already very self-selecting.
Very tight knit. That's what we found in SaaS. Maybe we can dive a little deeper into how, as a B2B marketer, we should start to think about content marketing and the convergence between content and influencer marketing, right? How do we actually leverage both of those aspects to drive results?
Yeah, well, so much of the best content marketing is coming from B2B marketers. There are lots of folks who are just really good at also connecting with each other, and so the B2B influencer marketing piece, it's almost a no-brainer, is to just go and get quotes from others who are either in your target audience or they're influencing your target audience, and they'll spread the word themselves. And so these kinds of interviews, or just getting quick quotes, a friend of mine, Heidi Cohen, does these roundups of she'll get 50 or 60 marketing bloggers who are then contributing, and guess what? They're putting her links in their own newsletters, on LinkedIn, in their Twitter feeds. It's great. I don't know how she puts all the time into coordinating this, but content marketing and influencer marketing should go hand in hand, and there are just so many great opportunities to go and get viewpoints that your company wouldn't produce on their own. Once in a while I see a really great corporate newsletter or podcast or social account out there, but most of the time it's they're just too busy selling their products and not really trying to help me do my job better. HubSpot had been one of the best at really providing that information over the years. There's some like Buffer has done a really smart job, and you're seeing this a lot more on that SaaS front, and there are some of these series out there and resources, things that I'll bookmark that I've had a few of these occasions where I'm trying to look up who's behind it, and and I want to know the source of it, and I can't because they bury it so far down that it's like going to that other extreme. So how do you still at least say, like, by the way, like here's this quick one-liner on what we do and why we're doing this, and because if they're that good at sharing this information, then trying to get behind and say, well, what is in this for you, right? And how do you relate to this? Then I at least want to know.
Yeah. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time. If folks want to actually learn more about your content, join your Slack group, what are some good URLs or handles they can go to?
Serialmarketer.net is the easiest one. So serial, like serial entrepreneurs, and not like the breakfast food. But I think I did register the breakfast food domain too. But that's always easy. I'm at Berkowitz on Twitter, and then I have a kind of like landing page for the Slack group at serialmarketers.net.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.